It's not a secret to anyone that Kishimoto kind of forgot about his secondary characters once Shippuden rolled in. Out of the Konoha 12, the only characters that had a satisfying development after the time skip were Naruto, Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Sakura to a certain extent, though I would say she is more questionable. Before I get to my point here, please subscribe to this channel. It doesn't cost you anything and it takes 2 seconds, and also like this video if you enjoy Shikamaru because we'll be talking about him a lot. Naruto and Sasuke are obviously the two main characters, Naruto being the main character and Sasuke being the second most important character, so obviously those two characters would have a lot of focus and development throughout the series. And I don't think anyone is really disputing that with me. Sakura gets a lot of time to shine in the very first arc of Shippuden against Sasori and all that, but then she kinda disappears and she doesn't really become very important until late in the war arc, which seems a very strange decision, but you know, Kishimoto's not really known for writing good female characters. And she is mostly disappointing because we come from the standpoint that she is one of the main characters, because she is in the main team with the protagonist and Sasuke as well, so we are expecting her to do more than the other characters in the series. Which, to be honest, she still does much more than any other character outside of Team 7, at least in Konoha, you know? The characters we're talking about here. Team Kurenai, Team Asuma, and Team Guy are not very well handled in Shippuden in my opinion. The only character out of those 9 that has a satisfying development and conclusion to an arc in Shippuden is Shikamaru. You could maybe argue that Hinata has a decent conclusion in the narrative with the pain fight, but it's a very brief moment and it doesn't have as much build-up as Shikamaru's confrontation with Hidan by any chance. Also, other aspects of Hinata's and Naruto's relationship are very much neglected throughout Shippuden. They have like 3 scenes together and it's very lackluster. So Shikamaru really is the only character with a satisfying arc in Shippuden out of the Konoha 12 that are not in Team 7, of course. And I really enjoy what they did with Shikamaru in the Kakuzu and Hidan arc. The death of Asuma is much more of a plot device than anything to motivate Shikamaru and to develop him further. Let's be real, nobody really cared too much when Asuma died. We didn't really know him all that well. That was the only arc he was prominent in. He just had a brief fight with Kisame and Itachi, and he saved Shikamaru in part 1 as well, but other than that, he doesn't do much. And then he dies. We mostly get sad because Shikamaru, and to a certain extent, Ino and Choji are sad as well. We are more sad for the characters than for the death itself. But that death allows Shikamaru to become probably the best character in the Konoha 12 and Shippuden, if you're not counting Naruto and Sasuke, which is a good trade-off to me when you analyze the other teams. If you compare what Kishimoto did to those characters in part 1 to what he does to them in Shippuden, it's just way below expectations, I would say, because the Chunin exams was able to balance all those characters very well and show them to us. In a way, they seemed exciting, and all their fights, except for Tenten's always been useless, but anyway, all of those characters seemed important to a certain extent, and that was exciting because most of them, in my opinion, were good. I don't like a couple of them, like I don't really like Kiba, even though his fight against Sako and Nuko is pretty cool, and Tenten's always been useless, as I said before, so nobody really cares. But still, they had a lot of potential that wasn't realized at all in Shippuden, especially when you're talking about characters like Rock Lee and Neji. Neji's death comes completely out of nowhere. The character had been completely forgotten for 500 chapters, and then suddenly he dies, and you try to make a big thing out of it. And a lot of people really get emotionally attached to Neji's death because they like the character, but let's be very real here. Neji was completely irrelevant throughout the entire Shippuden era. It's just a harsh reality. Neji was killed because one character had to be killed during the war arc because, you know, people tend to die during wars, and if one of the quote-unquote important characters doesn't die, then there's something wrong with your war. but Neji wasn't important for a long time. It doesn't seem very earnest to me. His death is bad. First, because the way it happens is so completely useless and idiotic. He dies to a tree branch. A freaking twig kills the guy, and he was supposed to be a Hyuga genius. Clearly not. The other characters do suffer as well. Rock Lee, which everyone really loved in part 1, doesn't do anything in Shippuden besides kicking Madara in half, which is pretty cool, but it's one panel in the manga that he does something cool, and that's it for the entire Shippuden era. After that, he doesn't do anything, and before that, much less. If we're talking about Shino, Kiba, Ino, and Choji, well, those characters might as well not exist. Ino and Choji go with Shikamaru and Kakashi to face Kakuzu and Hidan, and they are literally completely useless. They don't do anything at all. It was very clear that Shikamaru was supposed to be the focus in that arc, and I don't blame Kishimoto because he's by far the best character in his team, but still, you know, you could have tried to do a little bit more with those two. Shino and Kiba are even more forgotten, and of course Tenten is a non-existent character, even though she stomps Kakuzu in the war out of nowhere. That's so weird. But anyway, Kishimoto tried to focus on those side characters. He tried to make one team important for every arc in Shippuden leading up to the Pain arc. If you think about it, in the first arc, the Kazekage Rescue arc, Team Guy shows up and helps with the mission, but their role isn't too major, and the only fight they have is against Kisame, which is a good fight, but the thing is, the team itself doesn't do anything in that fight. Guy does everything. The team is just stuck in the water prisons while Guy is beating Kisame up, which, you know, doesn't really develop the rest of the team. And let's be real, this is shonen anime. Fights are what develop characters. That's how character development happens in shonen, so if the characters don't get good fights, they're not gonna get development, and therefore they're not gonna be good characters anymore. Of course, Team Guy on that arc goes on to fight themselves. That's a very strange thing. It's completely boring in the anime because they just fill that in with anime-only material that's boring. Yeah, sure, the lesson that they have to be stronger every day is a cool lesson, but it doesn't really warrant that much screen time in the anime. It's quicker in the manga, but still, it's not really impressive. Oh, okay, the characters were fighting themselves. That's the only fight Tenten wins in the entire series, except for the one against Kakuzu, but Kakuzu's fodder, so it doesn't really matter. After that, we have the Kakuzu and Hidan arc, and then, well, Shikamaru gets really good development, and of course this is the arc where Team Asuma goes on the mission, with Naruto, Kakashi, and all that, which is by far the better execution in Shippuden for the side characters, even though Choji and Ino don't really get to do anything. After that, we have the Search for Itachi arc. That's the arc Team Kurenai was supposed to get the spotlight a little bit. Sure, they go with Naruto, Kakashi, and Team 7 in that mission, but they don't fight anyone in that mission. Okay, yeah, sure, they fight Obito/Toby for a while, but it's not really an important fight. Toby wasn't trying to beat them, he was just trying to delay them, and it was obviously that they were no match for him. And it was essentially a 1-on-9 or 10 fight. The numbers were very lopsided, so it's not really a classic shonen battle that you get development from. And so Hinata, Shino, and Kiba don't do anything whatsoever in Shippuden, because when the Pain arc rolls around, I thought Kishimoto had this in mind. He wanted to hype up each squad that were not Team 7 in a different arc leading up to the Pain arc, and the Pain arc would be when all those squads would work together to defend the village against the leader of the Akatsuki, which should be something very climactic. But no, that's not what happens. Shino, he stands there and confronts Conan with his clan, but we don't even see anything happening. Sure, Kiba goes after the Breda path, and they just run after him. Ino doesn't do anything, and Hinata does have her moment to shine in that arc. Other than that, there isn't much, really. Shikamaru breaks his leg, but that's okay, because Shikamaru had his development in the previous arc, and I'm fine with him being nerfed for this arc. Team Guy wasn't there there at all. And you'd expect they would be. I know why they weren't there, because if Guy was in the village when Pain attacked, he would have soloed Pain and then the arc couldn't happen. But you could just have Guy in a mission and his team could be in the village. Rock Lee, Neji, and Tenten could just be there and fight against the Pain bodies and stuff like that. But instead of doing something, you know, with the characters people kind of like, you give one of the hype moments of the arc to Konohamaru, the worst character in the series. Not the worst, but he's really bad. And that was just completely not earned at all. It was out of nowhere, and it's the only scene, essentially, Konohamaru has after the time skip, which is kind of baffling to me. Why would that be against the Path of Pain out of anything? If Rock Lee, Neji, or even Sakura got a fight against the Path of Pain, that would be much better for the narrative overall, because at least those characters are worked to a certain extent, more than, you know, nothing, because Konohamaru has no development previous to that at all. And then when the war arc rolls around, you think Kishimoto's gonna definitely give more spotlight to those characters, but no, in the first stage, when Naruto is not involved in the war yet, and they're just fighting the Edo Tenseis, we don't really get a lot of focus on, you know, the Konoha 12. Inoshika Cho do get to fight Kinkaku and Ginkaku, which are not the coolest characters to have a fight against, and they also fight Edo Tensei Asuma, which I don't really like that fight at all. But anyway, yeah, Hinata, Shino, and Kiba have no development whatsoever in the war arc, at least up until Hinata slaps Naruto and wakes him up after Neji's death, but that's not much at all. And then, of course, Neji dies, but he didn't do anything at all in the war. Rock Lee kicks Madara in half, and that's the only thing he does. Surprisingly, Tenten is really the most useful character in the war arc. Yeah, man, I just think those characters, they were so hyped up in part 1, and they ended up disappointing us because they didn't do anything with those characters, which I think most people agree with me. I'm not asking for them to have, you know, a major role in the series, but, you know, if all of them had at least one cool moment after the time skip, I would be satisfied with that. I was satisfied with Shikamaru. It doesn't even have to be as grandiose as Shikamaru's development with Hidan was, but, you know, give me something at least, especially for characters like Rock Lee and Neji, who are even more prominent than Shikamaru, I would say. They are more beloved by the fan base than Shikamaru, I believe, so yeah, why don't you just give those characters that as well? And I guess Hinata was the best one after Shikamaru, because she did have a good moment, the moment she confesses to Naruto, but it's kind of annoying because it doesn't lead to anything. It doesn't lead to any romantic development after that, and then they relegate that to a movie, which is annoying. And if you want to see how I'm eventually going to change those things, definitely go check out the Naruto rewrite I'm doing. It's a long series, and it's getting pretty good feedback, so yeah, definitely go check it out if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to this channel and comment below how you think they could have improved the Konoha 12 after the time skip. Like this video as well to help me out, and thanks for watching.